What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I am James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin. And apparently I'm trying something different in my voice today and have no reason why. It's so weird. But we're here to talk about, speaking of weird, a person that blazes his own trail and certainly does things his way. And somehow, again, has found his way. Week after week, he finds a new way to become viral in the social media sense. Antonio Brown has said some things about a certain player on the Baltimore Ravens. So let's get right into it. Glenn, what's going on here? What are we talking about?
Yeah, so Antonio Brown went on the I Am Athlete podcast with Brandon Marshall and was asked, look, if you can no longer play with Tom Brady, if that's no longer an option, which quarterback would you like to play with? And he simply said Action Jackson. And then Brandon Marshall followed that up with why, and he said, and basically Antonio's like, what you mean why? What you mean why? And we certainly agree with that part of his sentiments. But then that of course it's taken on some more life since then, with him then tweeting out a photo of him in a Ravens uniform and Lamar Jackson retweeting that and then having the purple angry emoji devil face. I'm not even sure. I guess that's the best way to describe it. So he is now once again being linked to the Ravens by his own doing. Not the first time he's tweeted a picture of himself in a
by his own doing, but also Lamar breathed a lot of life into that one.
Well, he certainly didn't come out and poo-poo the idea, but he did just tweet the little emoji. It's not like he came out with this. So let me just ask you this. What's your initial, reaction when you saw all this coming out?
I mean, speechless. Antonio Brown is a Hall of Fame football player. He might be better at virality. As crazy as it sounds, like the dude is a social media, not marketing, because social media is a tactic within marketing. Like, I'm not going to degrade marketing down to just social media, but he is a social media genius. Like, as soon as he knows how he's going to make himself money, and the way that he's doing it is keeping his name out there, staying relevant. He's obviously doing this whole dispute thing with what went on with the Bucks, but it's really about monetizing the eyes on him, right? Like, I know he has some deals with some crypto companies, and you'll see some other sponsored tweets and stuff like that. Trust me, he gets paid per whatever metric they want to put in place. And so, yeah, Antonio Brown, I cannot take this as, okay, actually, it's genuine. I'm sure he wants to play with Lamar Jackson. And the craziest thing is that he thinks that the Baltimore Ravens would sign him. Like, my instant thought was John and Eric meeting at their fence of their joined backyards and having a good old laugh about the idea that Antonio Brown actually thinks that he has a chance of joining the Baltimore Ravens. It will never, ever, ever happen. Ever happen. Last year, Glenn, like, you kind of took this stance last year. And I was like, and you were like, no. And I'm here to say that this, after what happened this year, will never happen. Because John, outside of like the Ravens culture, John is a football guy. In a lot of ways, however, Bruce Arians thinks, John Harbaugh probably thinks very similarly. So if he doesn't jive with Bruce, there's a very high likelihood he's not going to jive with John. I'm not saying they're replicas of one another. What I'm saying is that they're cut from the same cloth, raised, born, and bred in football. Right? So yeah, those are my thoughts on it thus far. What about you?
It's one thing I want to point out that has just blew my mind is I was looking at his age just to see, how old he's going to be, just from an on the field perspective. And he's younger than me, man. Where did the time go, man? How is it that I'm older than him? It just anyway. So
Glenn, I feel that way every
crazy.
time I watch the NBA draft. I'm like, I could.
Yeah, but it just feels like Antonio's been around forever, and then I look up and he's younger than me. Like that's crazy. But and by the way, he will be 34 when next season rolls around. Which for a wide receiver, that's certainly not young. I mean, that's certainly at the end of your career. But no, I 100% agree with you. He has no chance of becoming a Raven. I mean, one of the big things, Eric DeCosta talked about it, John Harbaugh's talked about it, that culture they put at a very high on their list of priorities when looking at bringing a player in, whether it's through the draft or through free agency.
Right.
And you can see over the years how they brought guys in and who they decided to draft. These are all captains of their team. If it's a free agent, you talk about Anquan Bolden, who was man of the year. You talk about Calais Campbell, man of the year. I mean, that's the kind of guys they brought in. And they have had moments where they kind of strayed away from that. And the big one recently was, of course, Earl Thomas. And we see how that ended up for them. Blew up in their face, caused a ton of dead money to be on their cap for a year or two. That really hamstrung what they were able to do in a lot of ways. So this Antonio Brown, if nothing else, you can't tell me he doesn't scream at you that he's a me guy. I mean, yeah, does he want to win? Of course he wants to win. Everyone wants to win when you play a game, but do you want to win and sacrifice to get that win? That is the big question with Antonio, and I don't think anyone would be able to argue that he could. He wouldn't be happy here. He might look at it and say he'd be happy from an out. No, once he got here, he wouldn't be happy because it's just not that kind of an offense where he's going to get the type of targets he would want. And any bit of adversity, any hiccups along the way, then the potential is that he could take his clothes off and run off the field during the game and then turn to social media and make a whole big thing of it. So absolutely zero chance. If he was a guy who, off the field had similar traits to, guys that we brought in the past, like Calais Campbell, and like I mentioned, Anquan Bolden,
he wouldn't be unemployed.
Then he already would have a job. Yeah. So it's just, it's cool that he had that ringing endorsement for Lamar Jackson. That's not a bad thing to hear an all-pro guy talk about how he wants to play with our guy, Lamar Jackson. I like hearing that, but 0.0 chance of this ever happening. John Harbaugh will be like, I think if Eric brought him in, John would just have to quit because he said, I can't deal with it. I can't deal with this guy.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, DK presents an interesting question here. What if injuries hit like what happened to the running back room? DK, it's a great question in theory.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying.
There are about 1 million other people on the face of the planet. I think that the Ravens would consider bringing in, myself in that list.
You think you're higher?
I think I have a better chance of playing for the Baltimore Ravens as a wide receiver than Antonio Brown tomorrow and in perpetuity. Yes.
Well, when DK says like what happened to the running back room, he would be implying that Bateman and Hollywood in training camp gone for the season,
like the day before.
Yeah, and then at that point, still you're rocking with Duvernay, Prochet, and whoever else is behind those guys, and not even thinking about signing AB.
Mow down the whole wide receiver room, okay? Just mow him down, and then he will still have a 0% chance.
Wow,
there's no way. There's absolutely no way with the like, say what you want. Like, I'm not here to litigate the legalities of the situation that happened with the Bucs, right?
Yeah.
I am here to say that his behavior was inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
His reaction was inappropriate, and that, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I'm kind of hesitant to make this comparison.
Well, I mean,
okay, I'm not going to make a direct comparison. Bear with me here, but
okay,
saying someone that doesn't need to be named, the difference between the description of what we read and the video when it came out was stark, right? We saw on live television, we all saw we didn't read about it. We saw with our own eyes what he did. That image will stay in every single coach, GM, fan, teammates' eyes for the rest of their lives. He's not escaping this.
Yeah. And look, from what was, eventually brought to light, it sounds like there were certainly wrongdoings on both sides of that particular incident. It looked like maybe he was trying to be forced into playing when he wasn't fully healthy, and of course that's
Right.
never a good thing either. But you're right in that his reaction is not something you shouldn't
You're in
remove your
control of your
clothes and run
reaction
off
at
the
all
field.
times, right?
Right, exactly. And I get you're frustrated, but there's other ways to vent that
And
frustration.
think about this, Glenn. I love the NFL. I love watching the NFL. But based on the fact that he's had a job after all the situations that he found himself in, and not just him, a multitude of players throughout the history of the NFL, right? Like
Yeah.
guys have done crazy things off the field, but because they produce, they find themselves with a job. But the military's roots or excuse me, the NFL's roots are in military, right? Like it's a very militant, rank-based organization, teams and stuff like that.
Brotherhood, all that.
Right, all that. So you break ranks, you make yourself an I guy. That to me is more of an impact on whether or not you have a job if you're a high producing player than what you do off the field. If you produce and you're an I guy to his extent, you have less of a chance of getting a job than you do if you do stupid stuff off the field. And I think that the evidence has shown that to be the case based on the long list of guys that have been in a similar situation, but have been great team guys, right? Just acted a fool off the field. And now he's kind of done both.
100%. And honestly, just from, let's say it wasn't Antonio Brown, if it was a different 34-year-old wide receiver, do you really want to bring an old guy into this room when you have a bunch of young guys who have been just waiting to get a decent opportunity and some targets out there? And we talked about how we're so confident in the assistant coaches on this offensive side of the ball, how we have the best receiving coach in all of football right here in the building at all times. So why not have confidence that the young guys on this roster are ready to step up and get a bigger role and that they can perform at the high level rather than bringing in any 34-year-old, no matter which 34-year-old you're telling me, even if it is a guy with obvious Hall of Fame, resume behind him. I still think that you let these young guys show, give these guys the opportunity to be the number one, number two, three, or four. I don't want to see scenarios where, James Prochet is a healthy scratch because we got,
Sammy
older guys.
Watkins, right.
Yeah, exactly. I want to see these guys get a true shot and to see if they can take it and run with it, because in the one opportunity we did see James Prochet get a big, chance, he showed out. He had 6 grabs and absolutely balled out. So let's let these young guys show what they can do.
Yeah, very last, I'll end with this, talking about our wide receiver room. I heard Rich Eisen, I think this was a year or two ago, talking about how he wishes that the old AB was still around. And he talked about that locker room with AB, with Santonio Holmes, with Mike Wallace. Like they were all dogs, right?
Pushing each other. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that our locker room, our wide receiver room, based on the fact that they're similar in age, like they have an opportunity to have some of that, right? There's not just one stalwart guy. There's not just one blue chip guy. There's a multitude of guys who, whether picked high or low or mid round, have produced and believe that they can be the guy, right? From Hollywood all the way down to Prochet, you guarantee you ask him, he believes wholeheartedly he can be the guy, and said, look, just like you said, Glenn, any sample size you give me, I've done nothing but take advantage of my opportunities. So we got it here.
And also, people can say, well, look at your history of developing receivers. This is a different Ravens team. Eric DeCosta has drafted more receivers since he's taken over than any other GM in all of football. No other team has drafted more wideouts than the Baltimore Ravens since Eric DeCosta has taken over the job. So he's not done adding to this group. We got a whole bunch of picks. So I expect at least one other receiver to be added in this upcoming draft, whether that's mid-round, late, or even early. So, I don't see the need. I don't like the distraction. And even if there were a rash of injuries, I think the negatives outweigh the positives.
0% chance of joining the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
0.
Yeah. Let us know what you guys think. I mean, are we off base here? Do you think that he is the guy that the Ravens are truly missing to get them over the hump in the playoffs, or now they got to climb out of the very bottom of their division? Or are you thinking we don't need that kind of distraction? That's something that won't really make that big of a difference on the field. So why risk the distraction off the field? Let us know everything in the comments below, and we'll talk soon.